All right, welcome to Locked In. It's Thursday night. There's no football, thank goodness. Oh God, what a miserable existence that was, right? Boy, that was awful. But we'll be begging for it when we're in like mid-March.
Yeah,
We're just
absolutely.
jonesing for any kind of football. But how you boys doing this evening?
Spectacular. Business
Doing
as
great.
usual.
Awesome. We've got our ticker back down there on the bottom. I've updated that for this week. You are all welcome.
I think that needs to
and-
be a regular addition to the show, for sure.
Yeah, see, look, there's a lot of work that goes into this ticker, okay? I'm
Oh, I
fine with
bet.
it when it's 4 games, but when we're talking about a full slate, that's a whole different story. I'm not so much interested in that. All right, let's get into it. The first game on the slate, Saturday, 4:30 Eastern on CBS. Tennessee at home, coming off of their round 1 bye, 3.5-point favorites against Cincinnati. The over/under is 47.5 in this game. Now, this is the one unique game on this weekend's slate. The other 3 have been played earlier this year. They're rematches. Here's the fun fact for the week, boys. I'm going to throw it in your face 2 minutes into the show. Are you ready? So here's your weird fact of the week. Like I mentioned, this was the only one that is not a rematch. The 3 games that were rematches, the first meeting this season, all 3 games, the total in those games was 58 points.
Wow.
So there you go.
Couldn't do that again if they tried.
Exactly. Like they couldn't put that together again if you wrote it that way. So I just thought that was interesting how that worked out. But they
So
were
we're
all
in for
like
a lot of fireworks.
Yeah, they were all like basically first month of the season matchups too. So
Right.
not really relevant to what we're talking about here today. But this is the unique one. So you've got Titans Bengals. 58% of experts on betting pros right now are going with the Bengals to pull the upset on the road. You've got Cincinnati, their defense 19 plus in 4 straight games. They've scored 20 plus in 4 out of 18 games right now. So 19 or less, I believe that number is. Let me double check that real quick. No, they've given up 19 or more. They've given up in 4 straight games 19, 21, 31, and 21. So right around like 20 points a game, basically. And then offensively, 20 plus in 14 out of their 18 games this season. They're putting points up in bunches. We know that. That's kind of their bread and butter. They're going to have to outscore teams. Now, Tennessee defensively has allowed 19 or less in 4 consecutive games before their week 18 game that they really didn't care about against Houston, because why would they? But here's the key. Here's the big note for me on this game. With Derrick Henry in the lineup, 28.4 points per game. Without Derrick Henry in the lineup, 21.3 points per game. So a full touchdown difference with King Henry on and off the field. He should be back in this game. And courtesy of our friends over at RotoViz, here is Ryan Tannehill's stat lines between the in split being Derrick Henry playing and the out split being Derrick Henry out of the lineup. So you're looking at 60 more passing yards per game with Henry in the lineup. PPR points, obviously not as big a factor here for what we're talking about, but 1 more completion on 3 more pass attempts, but more passing touchdowns and more yards. So Tannehill more effective, the whole offense in general more effective with Henry in the lineup, and that would make sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you just hit on it hard. They put up the points and are a more effective offense with Henry in the lineup, and everything rolls through him. He's kind of the exception there. In those 8 games that Henry played at the beginning of the season, the Titans in those games went over 5 times, and they went over this number that they're looking at this week an extra time. So only twice have they not hit over this number with Henry in the lineup. Now, how effective he's going to be coming straight out of the gate after this injury is going to definitely be the question and the big tipping point here. But I mean, like I said, or like you just said, that's just easy money there when you think about how effective he is against every single defense that comes up against him. And Lord knows they didn't care about playing the Texans a couple weeks ago, because the only reason for them to play the Texans is for Derrick Henry to rip off 250. So I agree there. I love the over there.
The lines, by the way, constantly moving. It is swung now slightly so that the Bengals are only 52% favored by experts. So they're hovering right around 50-50. But yes, to our guy, Jordan McDonald's point here, about 70% of experts right now are on the money line for the Bengals to just win this game outright. Also 70% hitting that over at 47.5. That's got to be mainly the Bengals, but also what I just mentioned, the fact that when you've got Henry back in the lineup, they're a full touchdown per game better than they have been in recent history.
Yeah, I can definitely get on board with the over on this one for everything you guys said. And I think I would also probably lean towards Cincy covering. I don't know if they're going to win this one outright, but it's just hard to bet against Joe Burrow right now. What he's doing in these games is just, it's crazy. He's not turning the ball over. He's hitting shots down the field. Him and Jamar Chase are just completely on the same page right now. Mm-hmm. And, we see this every now and then, maybe every other playoffs, that the team that has the first round bye can come out sluggish and rusty, and they just don't look like what they look like during the regular season. And, if I had to choose between who do I trust more, Ryan Tannehill or Joe Burrow? I mean, I'm going to go Joe Burrow every single day of the week. So I definitely lean towards the 3.5. I love getting the hook in this one because even if they lose by a field goal, I can still cash in. So I think that's where I would go with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I absolutely agree there too. I think that, what they're accounting for here is that this team kind of reverting back to what they were before the Henry injury.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't necessarily see that. I see a team that I never really thought was that great to be holding the number 1 seed. They might be the worst 1 seed in the history of the league at this point. They kind of limped their way here, and we're kind of hoping to see Henry pop off. But like you said, I think that when it comes down to it, Joe Burrow and the Bengals have been playing extremely well. And this is a huge, huge mismatch for the Titans cornerbacks. So the Titans are really back heavy in their secondary, where their safeties get a lot of play. They're really, really good. They get a lot of awards, and rightfully so, but they really lack at corner, and they lack size at corner. So when you see guys like even Jack Rabbit gets hurt at practice this week, and so they're going to be rolling even lighter at corner, even smaller at corner, and that just puts them behind the 8 ball when you have a guy like Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and these guys are, fairly large and play huge ranges and beat all types of coverages. So it's a hard matchup for them, and I don't see them putting up as good of, production off the rust of not having Henry.
Yeah, it's like I mean, even the pre-injury Titans, it's not like they were an elite team or anything like that. They had their struggles even with Henry in the lineup. I mean, the game that comes to mind is their Week 1 game against the Cardinals, where they just got blown out at home. I mean, they were good. They were definitely a playoff team, but they weren't this elite 1 seed, with Henry in the lineup. So I think, they're definitely a little overhyped right now.
Well, and it's an interesting, it's an interesting swing too, because we talk about the beginning of the season because that's all the sample size we have, right? We're talking about, 2.5 months ago, basically at this point or 3 months ago for Derrick Henry actually being in the lineup and what the Titans can do. But at that time, in that stretch, when Henry was playing, the Titans defense gave up 20 points or more in every game but 3. So in a majority of the games they played in the first half of the season, they were giving up a ton of points and they were chasing a lot of points. Whereas this defense has been really solid for them the last back half of the season here. So they've been the reason they got to this point and ended up with the 1 seed that they didn't deserve. So, I mean, you got to give credit to that defense. Can they stop and slow down this Bengals offense that not many have slowed down to this point? Like their low water mark on the season is 16 points. Can you score more than 16 and feel like you can hold them down to 16? That's the key here. So
yeah, absolutely. It's an uphill battle for them right off the rip.
I'm mistaken. They scored 15 against Denver, but 15 against Denver, and then they scored 16 in both games against Cleveland. So, I mean, it is what it is, but the Bengals, I think, can easily get over 20, and I don't think that the Titans have the firepower here to keep up with them. I think I'm good with Jordan here taking the Bengals on the money line. I think they're the quote unquote Cinderella
let's be
this
honest, it's
cycle.
definitely going to be more fun seeing Burrow versus Mahomes or Allen than Tannehill in the championship game next week. So
Right.
selfishly,
Yeah.
I'm
All
definitely
over
gonna take
again?
that one.
Yeah.
Right.
No offense to our friends in Tennessee.
Right, exactly. All right, moving on to the nightcap in that one, the other number 1 seed. You've got the Packers hosting the 49ers. They are 5.5-point favorites. Over under is set at 47. The Packers, as I mentioned before, they won this game in week 3 against San Francisco on the road. They won 30-28 on the last second field goal. And again, 58 points was the total in that one. 80% of experts on betting pros right now have the Packers on the money line. The Niners have won 8 of their last 10 games, 23 plus points in 3 straight games, and in 9 of their last 10. So the offense is actually hitting its stride right now, and they have allowed 24 or less in 6 straight. The biggest weakness and issue for the Packers is, and always has been, their defense. It's certainly not Aaron Rodgers in the offense. The Packers have put up 24 plus points in 7 straight games, and they've put up over 30 in 6 of those 7. But the Packers defense is allowing 28 plus points in 5 of their last 7. So if they can put points on the board, the Niners have a legitimate shot in this one, but they're going to have to win a shootout. And I don't think they can win a shootout. That's the major problem for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it comes down to, in my eyes, I think that the number of 5.5, it's moved away from San Francisco from 6. And I think that the reason behind that is because people see that number and they think, well, San Francisco is fully able to keep that close. But when we talk about, almost a money line lock, I think you see Green Bay as this extreme value here, because when it does come down to it, you might have a close game, but it's going to be Rodgers making that one throw to put them over the top, while we talk about that one Garoppolo misfire or that one or two, bonehead Garoppolo plays where he gives the other team the ball. It's just kind of written in their DNA. And we see San Francisco as being they're a fairly complete team. We downplayed them a little bit last week, and they showed that they can show up and play really great defense against good offenses. And that's what they're gonna need this week to keep this game even, like, anywhere near close.
Right.
Yeah, this is a tough one. Obviously, I have a personal bias a little bit here. I'm definitely going to be rooting hard against the Packers.
You and me both, buddy. This is really why I wanted the Cowboys to advance, right? Not so much for like the storyline with Mike McCarthy and eventually possibly getting back here, but if you send the Cowboys to Tampa, then you've got the Rams and their offense in what I believe is now the NFC Championship game in this game. And they're putting up the points and they're competing with these Packers, where this one just doesn't feel like it's going to happen.
I don't know. I mean, we saw the Rams in Green Bay earlier in the season. That didn't go very well. I think even though San Fran overall probably has a little bit less talent than the Rams, I just think Shanahan just keeps proving how good he is as a coach.
Yeah,
he can do whatever he wants, no matter what talent he has under center. And I think he'll figure a way out to figure something out to keep this game close. I mean, the question I have is the weather. How much is the weather going to play a factor in this one? This is going to be Jimmy G outdoors in super cold weather. I don't even remember when the last time we saw him do that was. And can he be effective in those kind of conditions? Or are we just going to have to see Shanahan work the craziest magic he's ever worked before? I know that's going to be a big question in this one. And that might be a reason why I might lean towards the under in this one, just because I don't know how well Garoppolo can manage in these conditions.
Agreed.
Yeah, like I mentioned, their first meeting, which was forever ago, so it's hard to take anything from. But, that was 58 total points in that game. The Niners have averaged 46 total points in their last 7 games. The Packers in that same stretch have averaged 61 total points in their last 7 games. Their lowest total score was 46, and that was week 16 against Cleveland, when Cleveland was desperately trying to make the playoffs. And their defense is just so good. It's their offense that held them back and kept them out of the postseason ultimately. But yeah, it's just, even in that game against Minnesota, when they were playing backup QB and it was like 5 degrees outside and everybody was panicked that the Packers wouldn't be able to put up points. Like even in that game, they were able to be productive and put up a good number. All right. If we got nothing else on this one, let's move on.
Yeah.
Let's go to the other NFC battle, the defending champion Bucks, 3-point favorites at home against the Rams. This means on a neutral field, they would call it a coin flip. And if this was in LA, they would favor the Rams by a field goal. The Rams won the game they played in LA 34-24 back in week 3. Again, week 3, it doesn't really matter, but just good to know they were able to beat them by 10 the last time these two teams met. 65% of experts on betting pros right now have the Rams on the money line. The Rams have allowed 23 or less in 6 of their last 7. They are really cooking since they added Von Miller to that linebacking core over there. They've scored 20 plus in 8 straight games, and they have scored 30 plus in 4 of their last 7. 41 was actually their lowest total this season, averaging a total of 47 over their last 8 games, and the over-under on this one's 48.5. The Bucks on the other side of it, 24 or less for their defense in 5 straight and 6 of their last 7. They've scored themselves 20 plus in 8 of their last 9 and 30 plus in 7 of their last 9. They've also averaged 47 just like the Rams in their last 8 games, but that does include the weird 9-0 loss they had to the Saints in week 15. So if you take that anomaly out of it, their average over the last 8 weeks has been 53 total points. So this game is going to be flirting with the over. I feel like it's got a good chance to be a decent shootout. But again, to me, I think the Rams have everything. They've got not only the high-powered offense where they can get into shootouts and beat a team like Green Bay in a back-and-forth offensive battle, but they also have the defense that's clicking and can shut these other offenses down. And to me, that's why I've got them in the Super Bowl. So I've got them winning this game on the money line for sure. It's just a matter of, do you think Tampa Bay makes it a game?
Yeah, and I agree there. And my whole big thing here is that when you look at what these teams were early on in the season, it's not exactly how they are right now.
Right.
Especially with Tampa Bay, who's been a little bit banged up, and last week lost a couple of people on the offensive line. Ryan Jensen went out, came back in, and then Tristan Wirfs went out, came back in, couldn't continue. He had I think it was an ankle sprain. And that makes life a little bit harder for Tampa when you're starting to lose these pieces that have really stepped up for you to be this like very intimidating roster.
Yeah.
And when LA has done the opposite, where they add a guy like Von Miller, well, I mean, that lines up perfectly with losing a guy in Tristan Wirfs on the right side of the line. You have Von who rushes from over there and has just been a killer since getting there. That becomes an extreme highlighted matchup going forward for me in this game. And if the Rams defense can make some noise, this game can really be hard for Tom to put up some points, which is kind of why I think we're questioning about flirting with the total. I still like the over because we know both teams can score, but I think when it really comes down to it, to have the positive on that key matchup right there and the points, I really love LA there. So
betting against Tom Brady is just not a fun thing to do.
Right.
And it's probably just not something I'm going to be capable of doing. So I think I'm going to just stay away from the spread on this one, and the money line is just too much. Every time you bet against someone like Brady, you're gonna regret it pretty quickly. The over under is very interesting. I definitely agree with everything Mason said about the Bucs offensive line and how that's going to be a weakness for them in this game. I think the opposite is going to be true for the Rams as well. I don't know how well their offensive line is going to hold up against the Bucs D line. They're getting healthier. We saw what they did to Jalen Hurts last week. I think there's a very real possibility this could just randomly become a defensive slugfest with how good these defenses are playing on both sides and how weak the offensive lines have been based on injuries over the last couple of weeks.
And historically, Stafford's sporadic. So, I mean,
he's very sporadic.
It wouldn't shock me if he puts up an egg.
Yeah, and he's not a mobile guy in any way whatsoever. So if he starts feeling pressure up the middle around him or anything like that, he's going to go down immediately. Same with Brady. So I think these guys are going to have a little bit of a tougher time maneuvering around like they normally do.
Yeah.
We know all the injuries to the weapons in Tampa Bay as well, so that's going to make it harder on Tom Brady. I don't like rooting for the unders, but I can definitely see that happening a little bit more likely in this one than in other cases. So I think that's where I'm probably going to lean towards and just stay away from the spread on this one.
And I think this is just going to end up being, to me, like throughout the season, the tests that you've had and the battles that you've had to get through. Like, yeah, obviously Tom Brady is Tom Brady. You never want to bet against him. I understand that. I completely get the logic there. But at the same time, when you look at what's happened so far this season for both of these teams, I mean, we talked about the Rams constantly. They're coming through the West. So they've got San Francisco, they played twice this year. The Cardinals, who they played 3 times after pounding on them last week. They also obviously played Tampa Bay earlier in the year. They played Tennessee earlier in the year. They played Green Bay already. And then they played teams like Baltimore and Minnesota and not so much Seattle, but Baltimore and Minnesota, who are teams like on the fringe of the playoffs. Like the last time that the Bucks played a playoff team other than Philly was Buffalo in week 14. Like, yes, they've put up great numbers and 30 plus in a bunch of consecutive games here, but the teams they did it against were Carolina, the Jets, Carolina again, the Saints, that game against Buffalo, and then Atlanta, Indy, who they put up 38 on, but then the Giants, Washington, the Saints, the Bears, they played a lot of slock. Like they played a whole lot of nothing this year to kind of cakewalk their way into the playoffs. And they have had a lot of injuries. They're dealing with a lot going on right now. So to me, like, I think the Rams are more battle tested. I think they're more ready and they'll be prepared for
I mean, that's fair, but they did lose a lot of those games, the Rams did. They lost to the Niners twice. They lost to the Titans. They lost to the Packers. They barely beat a Ravens team with Huntley under center. They didn't do well in those big games. So they might be battle tested in the sense that they played good teams, but they really haven't done well against those teams. So I think it's going to be a little tougher than that. You just because you play these teams, you have to show that you can actually beat them consistently rather than what they've actually done.
Well, it depends too, because again, like they won the first matchup and it was forever ago, but same thing. Week 4, they got pounded by Arizona. Then they come back the second time, they beat Arizona by a touchdown. And then last week they obliterate them in the playoff game. And week 18, they absolutely could have put San Francisco away and kept them out of the playoffs, and they didn't. But it's a game they were in the entire time. And I think that speaks more to what San Francisco is capable of than it does, what the Rams aren't capable of. But we'll see.
Right. And I mean, like you touched on before, this is on a neutral site. This is a pick 'em.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get into games like that, you obviously expect it to be very close. And I think that's why I lean a little bit more towards those points, just for the value on every point in a close game. Especially when a little bit last week we were talking about how Philly could possibly attack Tampa on the ground, on the edges, because that's kind of where they've been weak, and they just didn't. But the Rams kind of attack in that same way. So we'll see if the run game can kind of help supplement in this one and take the pressure off of Stafford, because we know, Stafford did just get his first playoff win, but he's been sporadic. And just because he's got the monkey off his back doesn't mean he's ready to go into Tampa and beat Tom Brady in his building. So I totally get it. My biggest worry definitely comes down to if Tampa still has the firepower that we expect, that we've seen from them most of the season. And I know that they're getting a little bit healthier, but it's still a little bit of worry to me when they come up against a really, really solid defense. I think that's kind of the crux of the soft matchups thing, is that it wasn't just soft offenses, they were soft defenses too, that are just giving up, points in bunches. So when they come up against a really tough unit, I guess we'll see how it comes.
All right. Nightcap on Sunday, last one of the week. It is a rematch of last season's AFC Championship game. The Chiefs won in Arrowhead week 5, 38-20. They pounded on the Bills at the beginning of the season. 57% of the experts, though, still have the Bills on the money line. They were thoroughly impressed with what they were able to do last week. As I mentioned, this is a rematch from last year, almost to the day. This will be played this weekend on the 23rd. It was January 24th last year when they played the AFC Championship game, and Chiefs won again in Arrowhead against the Bills 38-24, almost identical to the score they beat them by earlier this season. The last time the Bills actually beat the Chiefs was November 26th, 2017. So before Mahomes or Allen were even in the league. So there you go. The Bills had the first game in NFL history last week without a punt, field goal, or turnover. All drives ended in a touchdown or they ended the half. So again, extremely impressive. No one's ever done it before, even in the preseason. So to do it, not just in the regular season game, but in a playoff game against a division rival, I can absolutely understand why you would be impressed by that. They have allowed 21 or less points in 5 consecutive games, and they've done that in 10 of their last 12. They have also scored 27 plus in 6 straight games and 7 of their last 8, with an average of 51 total points in their last 6 games. Weeks 8 through 14, the Chiefs defense allowed 17 or less points, including 4 games under 10. They were really carrying this team when they got on that win streak to get back into the number 1 spot in the AFC West. However, since that stretch they had in the middle of the season when the defense was really humming, they've allowed 21 plus in 4 of their last 5. They've been really beat up, especially in the secondary. They have, however, scored 28 plus points in 6 consecutive games and 7 of their last 9, including having 5 games over 30 with an average of 58 total points over their last 6 games. So the over-under, everybody's going to want to flirt with the over here. I'm sure that's the way everyone's leaning. Yes, 75% of the public currently on the over in this game.
It's just way more fun to go over, right? Who wants to bet the under
Yeah.
the whole game?
Nobody wants to root for defense.
Be that guy who bets the under on this one.
It was like that game a few years ago.
Rams
KC. It was like, I think the number was like 63 or something like that.
And it still went over.
And everybody's still 70% of the public still on over.
Yeah. No, this is going to be just an amazing game. This could be like the game of the year for sure. And it's just crazy. Buffalo's only a 1.5 underdog on the road. That just tells you what the odds makers think of them and what the public thinks of them.
Yeah. They'd be a 1.5 favorite on a neutral site, 4.5 point favorite in Buffalo. That's insane.
Yeah, that's wild. You never would have thought that before the season started that we would get to this point, but here we are. And I think it just makes a lot of sense, actually. Like you said, Steve, last week we saw the Bills pretty much had a perfect game or as close as you can in football. Yeah. The Chiefs were really good last week, but we saw, they had a couple slip-ups here and there. Patrick Mahomes had a turnover, and then there was a fumble recovery that they gave up for a touchdown. So as good as the Chiefs are, they can have these slip-ups here and there, and you really can't afford to do that when you're playing against this Buffalo offense that is just at 100% right now. And I think the fact that they came into Arrowhead earlier in the season and won convincingly shows that they're not afraid to come into this game.
Oh, no, they lost convincingly.
The Bills won convincingly when they came into Arrowhead, I was saying.
No, they lost. They went to Arrowhead and lost.
This year?
Yeah.
No, this year they
Did
won 38-20.
Do I have that backwards? Oh, no. Yeah, you're right. You're
good. I was going to say, maybe I got that way wrong. No. The Bills came in. Yeah, they won 38-20. Allen had a great game. And I think it just shows that they're not going to be scared of this moment, scared of going on the road and pulling off the biggest game in franchise history since the 90s. I mean, this is just an absolutely huge game. And I think they're totally here for it. And I can definitely see myself betting the Bills against the spread and the money line on this one.
Yeah, I agree. You're telling me you're giving me the better team and the points? Like, I get that it's a playoff game, and if they were to have swung, the line the other direction on KC, it would have looked really, really weird. But I have a hard time, just like Steve said earlier, this Kansas City defense was a defense that went from being very laughable. We were making fun of them almost on a weekly basis on Twitter. Yeah. And then they turn it around, make some adjustments to their personnel, make some adjustments to their scheme, and they start cooking, but they've reverted back to that defense that's really having tough time picking people up. And when you look at what Buffalo does on their defense, it's the exact opposite. So when you look at two fairly evenly matched offenses that have firepower, can go blow for blow, and then your biggest difference is that one has a defense and one just does not anymore. That's all it takes. That's really all it takes in a game like this to set a team over the mark. And like we were talking about, this Bills team has been built for this moment right here. This might not be the AFC Championship game by title, but it is the AFC Championship game by talent. And when we look at what Buffalo has built their team around, especially the defense, that offense, it's to take down KC. And unfortunately, KC is just not in it right now to put everything together to keep rolling. And luckily for Buffalo, not to jack up the ego of all the table crushers out there, but this Buffalo team is built very similar to the Kansas City Super Bowl team a couple years back. That just was much better on defense than they were supposed to be, was elite on offense, and we're just cooking teams every single time they hit the field. And that's kind of what we've been seeing with Buffalo recently too. Buffalo has some numbers spread wise that are just enormous this year. KC has 2, but they haven't managed to cover most of them. Whereas Buffalo is covering 14.5 against Carolina, 16 against the Jets, pushing on 14 against Atlanta, which we talked about. But they're cooking now, and I don't want to get in their way, and I wouldn't. And I'm going to make some money off of it while I'm there. So.
What has this world become? See, this is why I hated this game and I hated this matchup, because I knew this was going to happen and I was going to become the Kansas City Chiefs guy. I don't want to be that guy. Why do you have to make me this guy, America? Why did it have to bounce this way? That this is how it has to go. But
don't blame America for your sins, Steve.
I'm gonna do it. Look, the more that the public wants to put themselves through folding tables, the closer this is gonna become a pick'em, and the more I'm gonna profit on it. Because I will gladly take the Chiefs on the money line. I will take them on the spread, and I will feel good about it. It's like, I'm not a fan of the Chiefs in any way, shape, or form. That is well documented at this point. But it's still, Patrick Mahomes, you have to respect what he's doing, and you have to respect what they've done historically in the playoffs at home at Arrowhead, especially with him under center. So until Josh Allen can prove me wrong, I'm going to take the Chiefs at home each and every time I have the opportunity to. So it is what it is. It's not super scientific. It just,
if you want to say that you love what the Chiefs have done at home with Mahomes under center, why can't we say the same thing with the Bucs and Brady under center? Obviously, last year all their games were on the road, but it's the same idea, right, where Brady is just on another level when he's in the playoffs. If you want to have that argument for Mahomes, I think you got to be consistent, and it's got to go both ways a little bit. The teams are different. Season to season, these are mutually exclusive events. Just because Chiefs were incredible the last couple of years at home in the playoffs, this is a slightly different team. They have more weaknesses this year, so there is a reason why you can't go against it this time around, I think.
I would be 100% with you if Chris Godwin was healthy, Antonio Brown wasn't a maniac, the offensive line was healthy, and Leonard Fournette was 100%. If those things were all there, then yes, I'd totally be with you.
And if we didn't have Rams tickets,
right. Yes,
if we didn't have Rams Super Bowl tickets, it wouldn't matter.
Exactly. Like, look, there's nothing wrong with the Bucs. The Bucs are a decent team, but they've just been hot and cold this season, and they've been cold against really bad teams, which is what scares me. And so have the Rams. I can't argue with that at all. The biggest thing in this game is going to come down to Buffalo's defense against Mahomes and that KC offense. If they can put up points on that defense, then they're going to win the game. If they can't, and they get shut down by Buffalo's defense, then it's not going to matter, because you're not going to win a low-scoring game, not with Kansas City's defense. It's not going to happen. So I think the Bills can win a game in Arrowhead 21-17. The Chiefs can't. That's the difference. If this game is like 45-42, I'll take the Chiefs.
See, I think you're thinking about it like what we know of the Chiefs historically more than I guess it's more recency bias on me and Vishaal versus the historical sample there, because I don't see the same KC team that I've seen in years past. That's why I think the AFC was so open, and that's why I think you saw a team like Tennessee, even though they were clawing, we still saw just a couple of weeks ago this KC team almost get skunked by my Broncos. Now obviously they didn't. They won by a hefty margin, but it's one of those things that it's like, this isn't this dominant force, but the Bills, which a team that that we all talked about a lot in the preseason, has finally hit that stride and are really cooking. And I think that I almost look at it as like the opposite of some of their previous matchups, where I see Buffalo as the significant better team on all facets of the game right now, at least. Now we can obviously make the argument. Now, is Mahomes the better quarterback than Josh Allen? Yeah, I mean the sample probably shows that for sure. But this season, it hasn't really been like that. I know that we have harped on Josh Allen for having a fair number of turnover-worthy plays, but Mahomes has been right up there anyway too. Even with some of his biggest statistical days, he hasn't always been the most focused with the ball or secure with the ball. And some of his grades throughout the year have kind of showed that. So when it comes down to another elite defense that he's running into, I think that it's going to be a tougher road for him than it's kind of being portrayed as, especially by being only a 1.5 points. Now it'd be a little bit different if they were at a clean 3 like the last game we were talking about, but they're really not. And I think that that's what odds makers are leaning towards, is that Mahomes isn't quite right this year. The Chiefs are a little off kilter, and we'll have to see exactly how they put up with a Buffalo team that's clicking on all cylinders.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, the difference making unit in this game is absolutely 100% the Bills defense.
Right. Agreed.
Because
agreed. Absolutely.
It's not that, again, it's not that I think the Bills are bad or aren't good in any respect, but the Chiefs, like I said, can win a shootout. They cannot win a low scoring game. The Bills can win a low scoring game. And this season, when the Bills have allowed over 21 points, they're 0-5. So, I mean, they can put up points with anybody, but when the defense is giving up points and they're keeping Allen off of the field, then it makes all the difference in the world. So it depends on if they can keep the Chiefs out of the end zone. And if they can, then yes, they absolutely win this game, and they probably win the conference. I think the winner of this game goes to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think we can definitely agree. And I see it. I see that too, for sure.
Yeah.
Because this is going to be, I mean, even just like last week, the Bills aren't going to necessarily be able to repeat their historically great performance last week. They're going to have some sort of regression. It's just going to be in what department does that come in. Now you're not going to have the beautiful, I think it was Poyer interception. You might not have the perfect game from Josh Allen, and I think that's kind of where that question lies: is that still enough to beat this KC team?
Right. Oh, I'm sorry. It's 0-4, not 0-5. But there you go. Yeah. So 4 of their 6 losses this year, they allowed over 21 points. So if they allow 21 points or less this season, they're 11-2. But if they go over that Mendoza line, 0-4. So there you go. There's the key.
We're playing with gasoline here. Let's go.
That's right. So when the Chiefs get past that 21 and you're live betting the game, just go ahead and hit the Chiefs money line, whatever it is at that point. It's totally worth it. There you go. Any closing thoughts for the weekend, boys? We'll have a real short show next week.
I think we can stretch it. I'm pretty good at BSing. I think that we can all, I think we could be here for a good while. So
yeah, push it out for a little while.
I'm just hoping we get better games this week than last week.
I mean, low bar, right?
Very low bar,
right? Not
no
too
blowouts. That's hope that Sunday or the Saturday matinee is the only bad one. Hopefully the rest live up to the expectations.
Yep.
Yeah, that'll be a good one. But we have more to come. Check out the Discord. We have tons of picks on there. Me and V, we throw all of our picks for all the way through the playoffs into there. We had some good ones. Well, I didn't have too many great ones last week, but V did. V killed
some
it.
okay ones.
I think we won like 50-50 last week.
I think we did decently, but so we have those in the Discord. Make sure you check those out. V has another piece that we're working on related to the coaches hirings. That's going to be awesome. We're making more player prop picks, so check us out. We're rolling and we're going to keep it going. So let's lock it in, boys.
Awesome. All right. Well, again, keep up with everybody here on importantnonsense.com, patreon.com/importantnonsense to get into the Discord. And until next week, everybody enjoy the games and keep up the nonsense.